So in this video I'm going to tell you about all the choices I make when I film with my XH2s. However, this is not going to be about the settings and the frame rate that I use, none of that stuff. But for context, I shoot everything in 6.2K open gate, 25 frames per second, and I shoot f-log2 auto white balance. So if you want a more in-depth video about the settings I use, go there. That's going to give you everything you need. So of course, when you're filmmaking, you do have to think about composition, lighting, focal lengths, all of that stuff. But in this video, I want to talk about the creative choices I use. Hopefully some of these ideas might lend themselves to you when you're making films yourself. Anyway, here is a short film that I made to prelude the points and choices that I make when filmmaking. And if you do want to know more about the gear that I use and things like that, let me know in the comments. I'll happily share what I use. However, like I said, this is all about creative ideas and the choices I make. So I hope you enjoyed that short film. As you can see, one of the main choices I make when filmmaking is I use static shots. Now you may be thinking, oh, of course you use static shots, it's only him and his camera. But I tend to use this even when I'm shooting client, corporate, wedding, etc. Any of those things, I will use static shots. And why they're so good is because you can set them up almost as if it's a photograph. You find your composition and you let the scene breathe. Something magical can sometimes really happen when you just let something have its time and unfold. This is used quite often in major motion pictures. I think a lot of people are employing the same technique, and I think it's something that most people should use more often. I started using this at the beginning of my filmmaking journey, and as I've grown into it, I obviously went through all the gimbal and all of the movement and all of that. But I think with movement, you can definitely find that it can be just too overwhelming and it just doesn't give you enough time maybe to figure out what the scene is doing and what you're trying to show. I think in a static shot, weirdly, there can be more creativity within that shot and it can lend itself to being cinematic. Another choice I like to make when making films is to play with the aspect ratio. Now, as you can tell from the short film, you can see that I shot in a 4:3 aspect ratio. Aspect ratio basically describes the size of the film. 4:3 inches of 35mm stock. The main reason I tend to shoot in 4:3 is because it gives a nod to nostalgia. I am a sucker for nostalgic things, and shooting in 4:3 gives a huge nod to an older time when everything was square. Obviously this isn't fully square, but if you know what I mean. Because before the industry standard of 16:9, everything was shot in this ratio, so it's more of a stylistic choice for me anyway. And you can also play in many other aspect ratios. I'm choosing this at the moment because this is my preferred way at present, but it could definitely change, and when and if I probably do. It's a creative choice and is usually made at the beginning of the creative process. So think about aspect ratio before you start making your films. I do think you'll give yourself a good head start before making your film. Another choice I make that you may have seen while watching my short film is I like to shoot detail. What I mean by that is I like to grab close-ups of certain objects, things. I will focus in on a flower, I'll focus in on my dog, I'll focus in on a cup of tea. I like to grab the details of the story. Even if the scene is a little dull, you can just show a little bit more interest by finding a detail of some flowers or of Sid, my dog, or anything like that, just to give a little bit more of animation to, again, what I said before, some of the static shots that I use. I think this is quite an underrated one. I know it sounds simple and some people do it very, very well. I, however, always used to miss this, and it's something I try to implore more and more as I go on in my filmmaking journey. So this choice is an obvious one, but it has to be said. Think about your audio, or what they call in the business, Foley. Foley is a unique sound effect technique that involves creating and performing everyday sounds for movies and television shows. Like I said, I am playing with a static shot that has details, and what I'm trying to do is capture all of the senses and place my audience, my viewer, in my story so they can feel what I'm feeling. And through audio, there is no better way. So make sure, if you know, they hear the fridge opening, they hear that noise. When you pour your kettle into the tea bag, you hear those noises of the water splashing against the cup. That stuff really resonates with an audience, and I think it's something that a lot of people underestimate and kind of maybe mute when it comes to filmmaking. So don't forget about all of the senses that you're trying to grab when making your films. And one of the last choices I make at the moment, which has become really essential and only been employed recently, is something called Dehancer, which is a plugin I use. When we talk about nostalgia, this really is giving a nod to the work that I'm trying to produce. Dehancer basically gives you that old nostalgic feel in the texture and the grain of your filmmaking. I have used this plugin on many of my films on YouTube and with client work. It's such an underrated plugin, and the difference it makes to the overall feel to the film is huge. FYI, Dehancer are not paying me to say this. They gave me a trial to use this. I have loved it. It is one of the best plugins I use, and I slap it on every time I make a short film or something that I feel needs a little bit more emotion. It kind of gives that kind of essence to it. And Dehancer kindly have given me a code for you. So if you use JDucker at the checkout, you do get 10% off. Honestly, I would not push a product if I didn't think it was good. Like I said, I've used it in this one, and I've used it in many of my other YouTube videos. So go check it out. It's definitely worth having a look at, and I think there's a free trial. So just use it for the free trial, if anything. But if you like it, use the code and get yourself 10% off. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. Do like and subscribe. Keep rocking the free world. Do. I keep doing that at the moment. I'll see you in the next one.